Welcome to True Vine Talks with Rachel and Linda. Thank you for joining us. We have had a little break. We don't know why. We just needed a little reprieve, right? Um, so Rachel and I want to, process and talk about something that we've all been experiencing, pandemic, COVID, and what trauma is and what it does to us. And the overarching question, which came from a wonderful person I know who shared with me this insight, and I thought was beautiful. They said, do you really ever overcome trauma? Big
$1 million
question.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. And that person shared that with me, and that just I got to scratching my head with all my clinical experience, personal experiences. And so yeah, it got me thinking, and we thought it would be a good topic. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, do you ever really ever recover from trauma? Yeah. And so I think it's important for us to kind of process what is post-traumatic stress disorder. I've got that up on the board. So,
Yeah.
how would you describe it? And we don't have to be all clinical, just, giving people some insight. What is post-traumatic stress?
I guess just like in layman's terms, I would describe it as an extreme reaction to anything that the brain has difficulty coping with, right? Like any being overwhelmed and unable to cope in stressful situations.
Very good definition. Yeah, it's we think often about men going off to war and coming back with negative memories of what happened when they were in war, and them just having a lot of anxiety and distress and just being hyper vigilant, um, about their surroundings, because war creates hypervigilance. And so often we associate PTSD with the soldier coming back home, and that's true. That's been true in my world. Um, Knowing my husband had spent time in Iraq and what he had endured while he was there, that's traumatic. But there's also other trauma, and there's sexual abuse, and sometimes people don't even know they were sexually abused, and
Right.
they can have flashbacks, or when they're trying to be intimate, something just triggers them and they feel uncomfortable, and they can't be intimate because of that. So sexual abuse is very traumatic. There's physical abuse in childhood or in adult life, being physically attacked by someone. There's verbal, you know, someone that, gaslights you all the time and makes you feel like you're crazy when you're not, and they lie and manipulate you. That's traumatic. So there's a lot of car accidents, or a boating accident, or almost drowning.
Neglect.
What's that, Miss Rachel?
Neglect.
Neglect.
Being neglected, right? I think that happens a lot with children right now, and the drug epidemic, and their home, and the parent or guardian that's supposed to be watching them is passed out, and so no one's available to meet their emotional needs. No one's available to feed them, change their diaper. That's traumatic.
Very traumatic. You're right. For a child to be not get their physical or emotional needs met, it leaves a deep hole in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, it's there's an umbrella of things that could have occurred or happened for you or someone else you know. Um, you know, learning about my husband's wartime, that's traumatic. Needed to hear it, right? Needed to hear that it was scary. So you can experience trauma by listening to someone's experience.
Yeah.
If you were alive during 9/11, that was traumatic, watching those towers come down on the news. That's left you with, you know, a lot of anxiety about safety. You know, if I get on an airplane, is it going to be okay? Don't know. And then our current environment is, you know, we're just, um, we don't know where the virus is. So we're all hyper vigilant right now about the virus, something we couldn't even see. And also, you know, there's just so much happening, you know, right now. And so it's all encompassing, PTSD is, and no person can say, well, that couldn't have been traumatic for you.
Different for everybody. What's traumatic to one person may not be traumatic to another person.
Yeah. So you could be in the same car accident with someone and they not have the negative memory that you have.
Right.
You could have the same parents fight all your life, and one sibling remembers the yelling, and the other sibling says, "What yelling?"
Yeah. Yeah. It's our own personal experience and how we process that event.
Yes, absolutely. And when we talk about symptoms of trauma, what are some symptoms that often comes with actually experiencing it or hearing about it? What are some symptoms we have?
Yeah. So people often report having like intrusive, reoccurring thoughts or flashbacks. So they'll be going about their day, and all of a sudden they'll have like an image play in their mind of what happened. People also experience nightmares or night terrors. And so they have a really hard time sleeping because they know, like, well, every time I go to bed, I have these horrible nightmares where I just replay this awful event and what happened, and I don't want to do that. So what they'll do a lot of times is like avoid sleeping. They're sometimes hyper vigilant and like very aware of their surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Other times people are very numb and they feel very little or nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some more?
Yeah, definitely. You know, the fatigue sets in. Uh, they're often restless. Just
Mm-hmm.
notice they're usually fidgety. Yeah.
Yeah. Heat up, on edge.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes in their thoughts, when they're communicating, uh, they'll go in several directions. I've noticed, and we'll be talking about one event that happened, but then we jump over to some other topic that's totally not related to what they were sharing. And so to me, that indicates there's some dysregulation there. What's causing this sort of split off kind of experience? And usually that's trauma. Usually they've experienced something pretty traumatic, and when they start to talk about one thing, something else shows up, and they go off onto that topic. And then you're trying to go around and figure out, okay, so we were talking about this. So what just happened for you? Yeah. And then get dysregulated. And you'll see the affect change. Their facial expression will go from happy to sad in a matter of seconds. And that's when I really think, yeah, they've experienced something traumatic. Whether they know what it was, some people don't have no memory of it, and some people do. It's usually what happens.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not, like, a lot of times I think people think of trauma as a really significant, like, one-time major event, right? Like war, car accident. But it can be a lot of little things, like, over a long time. Like we talked about, like a emotionally abusive or neglectful childhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so those are the ones where a lot of times people don't realize that they experienced trauma because that was their normal. That was what they were used to.
You're right. Yeah. So then when they're like in, not understanding when they come into a relationship, why that person isn't fighting with them in that way. Like, I thought this is what this looks like. I
Right.
only saw this or experienced this. So why are you not fighting with me? I don't understand. So yeah, it can be very dysregulating. Does that word dysregulating? Do I need to define it? Is that a big? Sometimes I'll read that word and I'll be like, I wonder if people know what that means.
Yeah, go ahead and describe it because we use it a lot.
Yeah, I think that it's important. So to be dysregulated means you're you're sharing an experience and the affect doesn't always match. So you're sharing, oh my gosh, I got so hurt, and then you're smiling and it's like, something is dysregulated. You're detached from the experience in some kind of way. Is that how you would describe it when we describe being dysregulated? Or
I, I would describe it as, like, something about the situation or the mood is not, like, stable.
yes,
That makes sense? Like, safety and stability has gone out the window and it's very chaotic.
good description, Rachel. Yeah. And it feels chaotic for the person on the receiving end.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that, like, when I'm feeling confused about what's happening and something's just off, I'm like, ooh, this is something's dysregulated here. This isn't.
Yeah. And I've felt dysregulated at times and had to like go back and be like, okay, something doesn't feel right, or I feel unsafe and I'm not sure why. So
Yeah.
that goes back to the trauma where I may have someone will say something to me, or a man, or will say something to me and it just triggers me. They say it just rubs you the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's when I feel dysregulated. Then I pop right into anger and I don't know where it came from.
Mhm.
Well, if I do know there was some trauma. So um, that's why that actual interaction dysregulated me, whereas someone else had the same conversation with that man and they wouldn't pop into anger. So
Yeah.
it's triggering. Yeah, like you can be triggered and not know it. So um, can you pause that for a second, Rachel?
Yeah. Whenever I'm working with someone and they describe getting really upset or panicked and they feel like it came out of nowhere, they're like, I don't even know what happened, what started it. I like to ask, like, well, did the situation look like, sound like, feel like, or smell like something that happened in your past?
Ooh, that's good, Rachel. I'm gonna steal that from her. I like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I got that. I can't take credit. I got that from a professor in my counseling program. So,
That's good. That's how we learn.
mm-hmm.
And we just take that information and, just keep adding to become great counselors. So, as you are.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we know that trauma gets stored in the body, right? So it's a sensory experience. So if something feels like, smells like, tastes like, looks like, sounds like that event or whatever happened, ooh, the limbic system goes right into fight, flight, freeze.
Yes. Oh yeah, takes you back. Mm. So yeah, you're running and there's no bear, there's no lion, but you're running away because for you that brought up something very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, frightening.
If you've experienced a house fire and that was traumatic and you smell smoke,
Oh yeah,
you're gonna start panicking.
exactly. Where someone else would not. That's not experienced a house fire. So see,
Yeah.
trauma
Someone
is
else might go, oh, someone's having a cookout.
exactly. Yeah. So the symptoms of trauma are it looks a lot like anxiety and panic and fatigue and depression. I mean, there's so many things that come with trauma that look like all the other diagnoses out there.
Yeah. I think in children it looks like ADHD sometimes because trauma impacts their ability to learn and their memory.
Yes, look at all it could be a lot of misdiagnosis with trauma. Yeah. I mean, you don't just have panic just because typically. I mean, you could just have panic disorder, but I think a lot of it stems from early childhood negative experiences that bring on panic and anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then some people are just, I've read in the neurowisdom book that some of us are just genetically wired to feel like there's a dinosaur coming for us. And then some of us don't feel like any dinosaur is going to eat us. They're okay. They've got a cave and they're good. They know they can protect themselves.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It is.
That T-Rex would have ate me up. So I like that neurowisdom book about that, about why we're heightened in fight or flight and where that anxiety can come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So working with trauma, like if you're on a journey to heal from trauma, it's there's a lot of different things involved with that. So the talking part is important because we need to name it to tame it.
Mm-hmm.
What's shareable becomes bearable. All those like little rhymes I like.
I like
But
that.
there's also like, because it is stored in the body, there is a lot of like mindfulness, yoga, tapping, things that need to be incorporated to help regulate.
Yeah. Yeah. Tracking those, oh my gosh, he said that to me this way. So I feel like I want to fight him or I want to run. Okay. So noticing it, as the counselor will say, well, what happened for you? Where did you feel that in your body? I felt it in my stomach. Ugh, ugh, and so then we want to process, okay, So when you felt that in your stomach, what was happening for you in your, what you were feeling and experiencing? Oh, it took you back to that place. So like you said, you want to name it to tame it. And then you want to breathe. And sometimes, and in energy medicine, we taught, Donna Eden would teach that you would tap on that where you feel that pain. So if you felt the pain in your chest, you would tap on it. Even though I'm feeling angry or upset and I want to hit this guy, I still love, accept, and deeply forgive myself. So the body and the mind have to work together to regulate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So certainly in working with trauma, Rachel, you do a lot of that work as well in helping people name it to tame it, and because there's disruptions for people, they have those disruptions, and then when that happens, how do we get them to calm back down and regulate?
Yeah. It's learning self-acceptance, self-love, right? Being patient, because a lot of times when people do experience something that triggers them and they have this big reaction, they get frustrated with themselves and they think, that was years ago. Like, I've worked on this. I shouldn't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I need to have thicker skin. Why can't I just get over it?
Yeah. Skin's only so deep. Right? Because then it hits the, the nervous system, and you can have damage to your whole overall nervous system from serious trauma. Right? So like even in physical pain, they go in there and they cut off those nerves. And what are they cutting off? The pain receptors. Right? Is that how they do it? I'm just guessing. I'm not a doctor here, but so when we have unresolved emotional trauma, we got to go in there and, go deep and find out what where that pain is so that it can be opened up. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So trauma is very complicated because everyone's experience is very different. And that overarching question of, can you really get over your trauma?
That's a loaded question, I feel.
Yeah.
Don't you think so? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it depends on like how you're looking at that question. If you're looking at that question as if to say, can I ever get over trauma? Will things ever be the same as they were before? No. We can't go back in time. Things will never be the same as they were before.
Will you ever be the same pre-COVID, pre-pandemic? Will you be the same?
No.
I mean, are you not going to be hyper vigilant about cleanliness and
worrying about how close someone's standing to me, or looking if someone, coughs or sneezes?
Yeah. And I've been seeing all those memes like, hey, I have allergies. I don't have the corona. I'm like, they mimic the same thing. So, of course, if someone sneezes, you're going to be like, face mask, guarded. Yeah.
But if you're looking at that question and asking, can I learn how to cope with what's happened to me? Can I gain an understanding and heal? Yes, that is possible.
Yes. And Dan Siegel talks about that in his book about integration, making sense of your experience. That soothes the limbic system.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is where all the emotions lie. Naming it to tame it. And so, as our listeners, and we appreciate you listening, if you have experienced something traumatic that you haven't processed, Rachel and I, we are busy and we're grateful, and we would like to be able to help you. You can give us a call at 304-545-0033. Or Rachel may have some openings. She's getting busy.
I know. Thanks for
Yeah.
everyone who's booked appointments. Yeah, but my number is 304-991-4940.
Yeah. And thanks to the person who brought up that question. I don't know that I can conclusively answer that. Like you said, I don't think, personally, I don't think I would ever get over the trauma I've experienced. So, it's heavy, it's hard, and you can get dysregulated quickly. So what Rachel's saying is have some compassion for yourself if you have had it trauma, which everyone's had trauma now. In my perspective, we've all been traumatized. So
I kind of view trauma as similar to grief and loss. Right? It changes your entire world. You're never the same, but you learn how to cope and move on.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Makes good sense. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't let it overwhelm you and control your life.
Yeah. You can be functional and have trauma.
Yeah.
And you can experience loss and still be functional. Yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot, but maybe not everything, and if you have questions or you have something, our listeners, if you guys have something you'd like to know more about, or like Rachel and I talk about, let us know. You can email us at truevinewv.com, truevinewestvirginia.com, and we'll be happy to, try to process some things that you're interested in. But we thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, have a good day.
All right.